A lot that is hitting the headlines is the Health PS sacking. We will be delving into that in regards to KEMSA. And not only that, we will also be looking. There is a new sheriff in town as a new governor, not in the counties, but at the Central Bank of Kenya, CBK. Yesterday also in matters of security and regional balance and integration, the PS for Interior, Mr. Kithure Kindiki, has talked about reopening of the Kenya-Somalia border. If you do not know, this border was closed by former President, the late Mwai Kibaki. It has been closed for about 11 years, and they talked about reopening the border in phases in the next 90 days. That is not only the only thing that is happening in the country. Well, the prices of fuel shot up again, and we are looking at how Kenyans now have to brave the hard economic times coupled with the recession that we have globally, and more specific, the cost of living is currently about to also disturb Kenyans the more. Other than that, the finance bill, remember, you only have about 4 days, because on the 20th day of this month the public participation will be locked, and now the bill will be in Parliament. So if you have any suggestions, comments, or even where you are watching us from, we highly recommend. Remember, we are also live from the broadcasting house here in the county of Nairobi, and also we are also live on all our social media platforms. So we have plenty to talk about, not forgetting the politics of the day. My name is Njue. I will be hosting a political analyst and also an advocate of the High Court to try and put these things into perspective, and we really do appreciate your feedback via our social media platforms as we are live. Now, straight to the topic of discussion today. Well, the mosquitoes are here because of the rains, and the mosquitoes have beaten the first PS in relations to the malaria, mitigation progress by the government, and the bug that beat the health CS. Let's look at that story where Dr. Josephine Mboro, the Principal Secretary State Department for Public Health, becomes the first high-ranking official in the Kenya Kwanza administration to be kicked out by President William Ruto. Dr. Mboro was fired alongside the entire board of the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, KEMSA, in connection with expenditure of the Global Fund in regards to the National Malaria Program targeting low-income households in the malaria endemic areas. Irongo Nyakera takes over as the new board chairperson of the troubled KEMSA. Well, as I had alluded to earlier, I'll be hosting a panel of experts, and Mboro, the Principal Secretary, State Department for Public Health, has become the first top government official in the Kenya Kwanza administration to be shown the door by President William Ruto. The sacking, according to a statement released by the head of Public Service, Felix Koskei, is linked to the expenditure of Global Fund on the National Malaria Program targeting low-income households. Dr. Andrew Mutava has been appointed as acting CEO of KEMSA, taking over from suspended CEO Terry Ramadan. The entire KEMSA board has also been kicked out, and Hezron Onyeku Omolo, Bernard Kipruik Bet, Dr. Jane Masinga, and Jane Nyangatui Mbatia have been appointed new board members. The sacking follows a promise by the head of state in a TV interview on Sunday night to crack the whip and streamline the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority.
You will see results.
Mr. President,
I want to give you my commitment. I will clean up cancer. Whatever it takes.
Mr. President,
whatever it costs, I will clean it up.
The head of state underscored his commitment to entrenching ethos of good governance by promoting accountability and openness in management of public affairs. The president reiterating committing to a new era in the management of the nation's health care by ensuring that no Kenyan is denied the dignity of affordable medical care due to corruption. The head of state promising his administration will spare no effort in rebuilding KEMSA supply chain management system to ensure efficacy and accountability in the provision of medical supplies across the country. Well, the first casualty in the Kenya Kwanza government, top-ranking Dr. Josephine Mboro, the PS for State Department for Public Health, has been shown the door in regards to KEMSA. And now allow me to introduce my first guest. He identifies with whatever happened yesterday quite passionately because he is a doctor himself. Dr. Isaack Hassan. A pleasure to have you, Doc.
Thank you very much.
Karibu sana.
Ben, asante kwa kukaribisha sisi.
Well, yes, I watched the whole president's interview and he said, and you can see the passion in his eyes, I will do whatever it takes, meaning that he is ready to even lose friends, even political cronies, just to ensure that we have a smooth, a well-managed Kenya Medical Supplies Authority. I would like to pick your mind on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the president has done the first thing in the right direction. I think he did the right thing. One of the important things that we must always consider is that when you are given a job, you do your best. And when you are doing your best, you make sure that the mandate you are given, you are able to discharge it in a manner that will going to fit the employer's rules or engagement. And one important thing that we have observed is that I think the president will not going to entertain any person or any of the employees who are likely to mismanage the responsibilities that they are given. And we know historically very well, KEMSA has been hitting the headlines for many reasons.
The wrong reason.
And to be specific, for the wrong reason. And sometimes it went even to the extent that when massive deaths were occurring during COVID pandemic, still Kenyans who are managing that place were able to loot, and the so-called the famous word, the KEMSA billionaires, emerged from there. From COVID? Yeah, from COVID. Yes. And when you look at it very keenly, I think people don't care about Kenyans. People care about themselves, and each and every person has learned to become a thief. People will want to steal from any opportunity that they get. And I think the president this time around has shown Kenyans, particularly people who are accountable for specific state ministries, that business will not be as usual, where you steal and you hit the headline and eventually you go and start comforting yourself with the money that you have looted. One thing that we will expect now, after he has taken this action, is that procedurally an employee must be, proved to why he has been discharged from his duties. And one of the important things that I think the president and the rest of the team should now engage into is a thorough investigation to be conducted to prove that their dismissal was justified, and of course they should also carry their own cross. They should go to corridors of justice so that they take responsibility for what they have done, and if they have looted, that resources must come back to the government coffer. We have a lot of challenges at the moment, and we don't want to enrich individuals. We really want to look at a country where each and every person's given responsibility discharges the way it is supposed to be discharged. The other thing that I will probably expect now to come is, the Global Fund is an external entity, and those are donor funding agencies. And the president, by taking this step, I think he has restored confidence among the donors that the president will not going to entertain issues that are not in favor of the common mwananchi, not individuals who are taking their responsibility in the wrong directions. So I think one thing, first and foremost, he has improved, he has shown that, he has proved that no one will going to play around with his government, which is a very good thing. Secondly, he has proved that if you are given a responsibility and you fail to deliver it, you will going to be answerable as an individual. There is nothing called collective. Thirdly, another position is vacant. I mean, the PS vacant is vacant. So Kenyans are expecting to...
You should apply.
I should apply. I think Kenyans are expecting for another PS to take the role. And I think people who are used to working very strict and straight and deliver their work are the people now I am sure he will going to look for. Not because initially there was that issue of just establish the government without looking into quite deeply the qualities and credibility of part of the team which are employed. So I think this time around this position will be thoroughly interviewed and we will all bid for it. And we're hoping that the president will going to look at people who are willing to serve this country, not people who are willing to loot this country.
It's quite unfortunate, and I believe if you look at all the other previous governments, I believe this is the fastest top-ranking government official to be fired. Less than what, about 6-7 months since she took over office as PS?
Yes. I think there are two things. One, first and foremost, you don't try an injured lion, because he will bite you very hardly. The president is already facing a lot of things. There is high cost of living, there is pressure from the opposition, there is of course as they say always the current budget, last year's budget has already been over exaggerated, and he's not able to manage that. So the government was bankrupt when he has picked it up. So there are quite a number of things that the president was already going through that he doesn't want to entertain issues within his government. And I think that's the right thing that each and every person who has a lot of external pressures will do, because he'll expect minimum pressure from his quarters, and he will expect much of his team to be finding a solution to the current external challenges that the government is facing. We have just come out from drought. Now we are hearing everywhere there are floods, and then all of a sudden you also see that now the influx of the outmath of these floods will going to cause a lot of health issues. Now you hear there are cholera outbreaks everywhere. You hear there is an outbreak of malaria, dengue fever, particularly in Mandera. Currently people are all having dengue fever. Of course, issues of COVID has not disappeared. Recently when they released their data, they said we still have infections going on. Recently, we saw also issues related to HIV, TB. Yesterday, I was seeing on the televisions that Kenya is still facing a challenge. In 2030, we were supposed to be eradicating HIV, gender-based violence, and many other communicable diseases that will have been cleaned up. And it doesn't look like by 2030, Kenya will going to achieve that. So I think the take in terms of his reaction is justified, in that if you are already dealing with all that, and we know we have a lot of challenge. You see, governors are providing a lot of pressure, saying that they are not receiving their money. That means hospitals are not getting also drugs, because governors are supposed to get drugs from KEMSA. Government is saying they have no much money to do that at the moment, and you get some money from the donors, then all of a sudden you want to tint the image of the government by mismanaging the resources that are trickling from international donors. That will be something that any president who is at heart with his people in the country will react to. So I think it is justified. I know most of the previous governments, they could still entertain, because probably there's link that they had with individuals who are doing those things. So I think that by concluding that, I think the president's move was a drastic one, which was rightfully done, and I think other accounting officers will be now very much watchful.
It's a good thing.
Going to work towards the right thing, and everyone will not put his signature anywhere aimlessly.
It's a good thing you've said drastic measure, and I would really praise the president for doing that. If at all, even the Global Fund, they're talking about this deal is not quite okay. So the president has cracked the whip. And I do remember this is not the first, she will not be the first top government official to be fired. But are we gonna be in a situation where we have fired people but we do not be accountable? We've talked about heads rolling. Firing someone is one thing, but following it up, the EACC should thoroughly investigate, because we are also still waiting for the report in regards to the COVID millionaires. KEMSA has been on the headlines for a lot of wrong reasons. A very practical example is the ASO regions, and you come from Mandera. They have been complaining about drugs not getting to where they should. EACC, the Director of Public Prosecution, do you believe that the president needs to move a notch higher and everyone implicated in this mess should carry his or her own cross in court?
Yes, I think that is that's the right thing to do, and we are thinking probably that's the direction he will going to take. But there are two things. I think each and every state department has been given their roles to deliver. And EACC have a mandate to investigate all corruption cases. And I think one way or another, if there was certain protection for COVID billionaires in KEMSA, this is the right time now for them to move on, because the current president will not going to protect anyone. So if they have any evidence to prove that COVID billionaires looted money from KEMSA, individuals should be taken to court. Those properties and assets should be surrendered back to the government. I think it should be sufficient enough to pay salaries, because we know the government is facing a lot of challenge in terms of paying salaries, as we experienced previous months. I think DPP per se doesn't do investigation. So the investigative agencies, once they deliver their part, I'm very sure DPP will going to also pick up his task. And if he doesn't, then of course the government should also, the president should also question him, or question EACC team why certain investigations are not rolling very fast and we are not seeing cases heading to the court. And if there are no evidence, there's no need of holding someone. If you don't have sufficient evidence to take someone to court, don't just keep him for no reason. Just because you think this person was aired sometimes back and he became a person of interest, you still want to continue keeping him. So I think we should balance everything. The right of the individual and of course the government should also take their role as it is supposed to be. So long as there is evidence, heads have to roll up. Corruption is one of the things that is killing us. And if we don't address corruption the right way in which it is prescribed in our constitution, and of course there are those state institutions that have been mandated to do this, EACC, Director of Public Prosecution, if they don't do their role, I think the president shouldn't shy of that as well. He should move in and tell them this is what we expect, people must deliver. We'll find a lot of challenges sometimes in cases that were earlier on mentioned in KEMSA. Probably they were senior officials who are interested in the case and then distort evidences. And now it becomes very difficult for EACC to conclude a case that happened around 5 years ago, simply because they can see the case, the incident has happened, there are some justifications, but the whole of evidence has been distorted. So it becomes difficult for them to pull out of the case, and it also, on the other hand, becomes difficult for them to take the case forward to DPP. Of course, DPP will going to ask several questions before he takes the case to court. So you will realize that there are a lot that is happening. And corruption is not only about the monetary aspect. Yes. Corruption is about the process also as well, in which we engage people, the process in which a criminal is prosecuted. If it is distorted, that's already a corruption also. It's a corrupt process. And I think if the president remains firm, the way we are seeing now, because he promises and he acts, then we tend to think a lot will going to change.
All right.
First and foremost, Kenyans, I think, when you are given responsibility, you fear. Fear is something that has been instilled in most of the state accounting officers after this incident. And that way it might control issues that will happen from now onward, and people will be very cautious. But Kenyans are very clever, so they will always find a way.
And speaking about, I remember the president, as you have seen in that clip, he's very passionate. He's talking about whatever it takes, meaning that he knows indeed. We have seen in Kenya, when a top government official either is hounded out of office or is fired, you find there are people who talk about, oh, you've let a person down. This is going to have a political dimension, and also could have a political ripple effect, because we do understand the semantics of how government is formed. You have to get somebody from each and every corner of the republic. Is this, you are a political analyst, is this going to affect anything politically, or does this have a political dimension?
Yes, I think it will, but it might not be for now, simply because you know, the president, when he has taken the whip, definitely he has consulted with his advisors and his other team. There are two things that are likely to happen. One is the current action he has taken warrants that it will go into interfere with his political mileage. I don't think so, simply because he has not yet replaced, and he's talking about service delivery. And in service delivery, I think the key thing that people look at is whether this particular person, as an individual given a task, should take his role the way it is required. Even your own relatives will run away from you when you are implicated with the wrong thing. So I don't think if there will be any issue at the moment politically. And I think in the current situation, he has a long way to go. For 5 years, definitely. And in the process, politicians will shape their processes so that they don't also destroy their political ambition. I think the president at the moment, he's pushing people away from politics and diverting the mind of people into the real work. And you know, Kenyans are used to, we come out of this campaign and we go into another campaign. Azimio la Umoja team decided to push us into politics by initiating a lot of, political tensions, demonstrations, and those other things. And, if that continues for long, it means then the next 5 years we will continue be in politics, politicking all through, and there will be no services that will be delivered to Kenyans who have elected people whom they expect to deliver services to them. So I don't think, so in essence your question, I don't think if this will have any political implication. It's just an officer who has failed to perform his duty. And if you have his or her duty, and if you have failed to do or deliver, then the employer has the right to terminate. And particularly if you do a gross misconduct, because corruption is gross misconduct in the terms of employment. And as a senior top civil servant, I think the only thing the president can do is to move you out of that place, because you have a lot of influence within the ministry. Even if you are left or moved to another ministry, the powers go with you, and still you can still interfere with evidences and investigation of the case that you have been implicated with. So I don't think if this will have any political interference with the president's likes or whatever it is.
All right. Now, also the board, Tabitha Ramadan, who happened to be the CEO, was also shown the door, and Irungu Nyakera now takes over as the board chairperson of the troubled KEMSA, together with a number of board members. What are some of the things that the new board, or the duties that the new board must do first to ensure that, as the president said, that he will streamline KEMSA no matter what it takes? The new board has a new role and heavy duty to clean up KEMSA.
It's very difficult first. I think it's good to know that it's difficult to change something in the government system. They will have to sail in first just pick it from where they found. But there are few things that they need to do. For example, as the board of directors for that particular authority, you come in and you know this board had issues. You need to do what is called institutional capacity assessment, where you will identify what is there, what is not there, what systems are in place, what kind of procedures are in place, policies that are being utilized there. And I know the government doesn't have it doesn't have challenge in establishing policies. Policies are there, but what is it that has not been done for the institution smoothly adopt their policy and procedures and comply with that? So we look at issues of compliance, we look at issues of staffing, human resource capacity, you look at issues of systems that are there, procurement procedures, policies. All these things need to be assessed, reassessed basically, and identify where the gaps exist. So as a board, I think the first thing they should do is understand the institution. And in understanding the institution, they must do what is called the capacity assessment of that institution. Institutional capacity assessment, once it's done, the outcome of that forms the blueprint of what needs to be done and what needs not to be done. And if that is established, then of course, the PS only signs on. There are a lot of people who play a lot of roles. For example, procurement. Their procurement team who have not been touched now. They only checked off the top cream. But who are the people who do these documentations? Are those people who are down there, who understands those policies, who understands those procedures of procurement? And if those guys are not also checked, then I think you'll just be there, you'll be frustrated, and you may end up failing again. At one point, you may also be dragged into malpractices that has been in place. What is it that they should also still look into is that they should find a system that can be closely monitored. Digitalization is one of the things that has helped many institutions in monitoring their procedures. For example, procurement procedures shouldn't be manual, and each and every person must take responsibility in ensuring that all the procedures within each step are adhered to. Once those systems are put in place, I think there will be minimum, malpractices that leads to such a crisis that we have already seen. The other thing that I think we need to look into, which is primarily their role, is to make sure that they sit in all tender committees, so that every tender that is being released, they take collective responsibility. That way means then, if there is malpractice, it is all of them who have taken. For example, now the board has been quashed, but now when you look at it very keenly, probably it was 2-3 of them who are involved, but others also carried their cross for them. But if they establish a system, because it's a very sensitive place, it's a place which KEMSA usually deals with a lot of money, a lot of, drugs are very expensive. A small packet costs a lot of money. So it's a lot of money that, revolves around KEMSA, both from donor and from exchequer. So the best thing is they have to take responsibility, all of them, in ensuring that any tender that is approved must be approved by all of them. Then, of course, the ministry, the PS now, it also infiltrates up to the PS. That means then there must be a board, there must be committee, tender committee from the ministry, from their side, and even from the donor agency. For example, Global Fund representative. There are quite a number of, LFS who represent Global Fund in each country, local financial agency that represent Global Fund. They should also now, in such a tender, they should be invited to sit there, so that this process becomes very smooth, and as soon as you release this tender, each and every person know that this tender went through a watertight procedure, and the award was clean.
Now, you've mentioned donors, and looking at our health system, it's also quite ailing because we do rely heavily on donor, and the Global Fund is just one of them. They have projects in TB, in malaria, in polio, HIV and AIDS, and the money that they pump into Kenya and most of African countries, they want that money to be spent prudently. They do not want any pilferages when it comes to their money. Does this erode the confidence that international community and our donor friends have in the country? Because the moment that they are the one who raise the red flag. Does that erode that confidence?
I think first and foremost, the donor fraternity and the government have collaborative agreement.
Yes.
And in that collaborative agreement, there are certain regulations. There are donor regulations that the government must adhere to. And when we say the government, the donor regulations will be adhered to. We mean each institutions that donors are giving money. For example, KEMSA, for example, National AIDS Council, for example, the ministry, the primary healthcare thing. Every agency that is given money have all the responsibility to look after that money based on the donors' regulations, policies, and procedures. And of course, that does not override the government procedures. What happened is that the government procedures are very clear. The donors' procedures are very clear. You merge them and make sure that no one does something contrary to those two procedures. And they always say if the donor procedure is more, if the government procedure or the institutions that is being funded procedure is more superior or more tight than the donor, they are allowed to use their procedures without going into the donors' procedures, which in essence cannot go very far from each other. But what is important is that confidence means is the money that we are giving being lost. If the money is not lost, then donors have all the right to build, have confidence in you and pump more money to help the institutions to run their function. But if they see there's a bit of infiltration, there's a bit of leakage in terms of the resources that they have sent, and the purpose of the resource is not going the way it was intended, then what happens is that they will always flag you red. And once you are flagged, sometimes they will withdraw completely your funding. So they don't completely give you money. I remember sometimes back, was it the same issue or it was which agency that HIV had an issue?
Yes.
The money was utilized for other purposes and the donor could not agree to that. So confidence comes later, but what brings confidence is that you must adhere to the procedures and policies that has been agreed. And finally, donor confidence is built by such actions that the president has taken. Government takes responsibility for the actions of their employees. And once the top leadership takes that responsibility, that means then, even if something has happened, the donor sees that there is the right direction the government is heading to, and they know very well that at any one time, if anything that is unprocedural happens, the government is also on their radar to make sure that this does not happen again. The only thing that now currently is an issue for us is that it has gone through all the government apparatus. We did not see, and then we were flagged by the donor.
Yes.
You get the point?
Yes.
So that means the donor is not one-on-one. The donor wanted to release only, the final approval so that now you go on. And
but they realize there are some
something which is not in order. An example of something that I always look at is simple thing. There are some things, I don't want to use a very bad word, but there are some things that is, I call it stupidity. For example, a company that is not registered anywhere.
Yes.
How do you go and submit a company that is not even registered in this country and you have given them an award? looks like...
And actually there's a tender committee.
Exactly. And it looks like all those guys were...
compromised.
Yeah, I mean, there was something which is going on. Because the first thing you look at in terms of tender awards is the company genuine? Is it registered? Due diligence, you do due diligence for the company, including tax compliance, including registration, including the latest directors in the last 3 months, not even previous ones. Because when you are to be given an award, the last 3 months you must bring the directors from the registrar of companies. Then capacity in terms of how can you give out billions of tender, and yet you even don't know the capacity of this person completely. They never had any capacity. So it looks like one way or another everybody was compromised who sat in that committee. And it's a shame for the donor to say, hey, there are basic things you guys have not looked into. For example, we can't see this company in any of the lists that you have submitted in the registrar company of registrar of companies. And that someone is just telling you that you don't reason very well. You don't know what you are doing. And that's what I think pushed the president to take that drastic action of wiping everybody. Because one way or another, someone will have just said, no, this company does not exist anywhere, we cannot give out. Even if you are interested and you want to give out to this company, it is not possible. And once you have a dissenting opinion from the rest of the people, then what happens is that you have the right to flag it yourself and say, we have not agreed on this company, I see there are irregularities with this company, we are not going to issue it. And the moment you say that as a committee member, then question arises and that cannot proceed. But if you all say yes, then I think...
I totally concur, because as reports I have it is that the Global Fund is the one which raised the red flag, not even the Kenyan government. But let me rope in Wakili. He's an advocate of the High Court and also a leadership and governance expert. Thank you so much, Gibson Gisore, for having time for us. And I'm going to throw you deep into the deep end. The first top-ranking government official in the Kenya Kwanza government, slightly over what? About 7 months, and she was fired together with the board of KEMSA totally by the president, who said that he is going to do everything possible in his powers to do that. Are we expecting to have a date with them in court? They might even make you a call, give you a call on representation.
Thank you, Bentre, for inviting me to the show. And regarding your question, it's interesting because for me, I first want to commend the president, because for far too long we have entertained a lot of things which, to my understanding, or the way I can put it, is that it's a lot of mediocrity, whereby we lose money, because KEMSA is not the first scandal. We have had this, I think, should be the 4th or the 5th, the ones which are on record. And during his interview on, was it on Sunday or on Sunday, he was very clear and categorical when he was asked by some of the media journalists. He said, just don't ask anything, you will see action. You will be able to see the action, so that, and indeed it didn't take long, we have seen the action, and this is a strong statement to actually depict that the president is serious on issues of fighting corruption. For the longest, people have actually, even one of the questions which was coming up was, do you believe in fighting corruption? And I mean, I think this vindicates him, that he has acted on something which people feel that it's something which has been a joke for too long. So as to his actions, they were very dire, they were very consequential, and I think it was very deliberate to send a statement that you shouldn't be able to mess up with anything during his tenure. And everybody now among the PSS, even the CSS, will be scared. I'm sure even the CS is scared, Steve, that, I mean, this came too close to me.
Yes.
Yes, so that is the kind of fear we want public officials to be able to operate under, so that they can be able to be very clear and deliberate in their actions, so that we ensure we don't lose money. In any case, I think also to play back, the president at some point had been asked in the campaigns whether he would be able to fight corruption, and he was very clear. He said that there will be no money to steal. I think this is it. that is actually playing to what he said, that people will not be able to mess with him the way they have been messing before. And it sends a message that the president is in control, and that gives confidence to the country that we can be able to rely on him, at least for this one. So on the actions, yes, you asked on the second part that these people can be able to go to court. Yes, they can be able to go to court, because I believe that the process, however it plays to the public that the president sending a message, still these people have rights, and their constitution is very clear on how you should be able to dismiss somebody. So they can be able to proceed to court and have the decision may be overturned depending on the procedurality, because there are some other people who are fired. You don't know whether they were actually clearly implicated or they were culpable. And the aspect of culpability only is something which can be able to be deliberated by the courts, and that's where the courts are there. The Labor Relations Court has very able judges who can be able to look at the actions. It's something in law which we call administrative law. Administrative law deals with issues of procedures and processes of somebody making a decision. So much as the president made the decision which cuts across, then there could be, if somebody feels that indeed he shouldn't be able to be victimized for something he didn't do, he has a right to still go to court and ask to be reinstated, or at least be compensated so that he lives honorably, because that is now dishonorable. This being dismissed dishonorably. Yeah. And in the military, your record indicates that though this is not the military, but even the public service, you cannot be employed anywhere. So it's very important that these people actually be able to go to court and fight for their rights. I'll be glad to take care of their briefs to get them on the process, but I'm sure they have their advocates who can be able to guide them properly.
And still in the courts, because at the end of the day they can also be prosecuted, despite the fact that they can also get relief from the courts. The net can be cast wider, because as Daktari has talked about, now the PS has not only quite carried her cross, it's her cross, and because of what she did not do. She did not look at exactly what was happening in her house. She didn't put her house in order, and I believe that is why the president told the PS that Josephine, you have just to step aside. Can the net be cast a little bit wider, because there is the tender process? The entire board of KEMSA was dismantled yesterday, and there are people who are involved, even in the ministry. Because I'm quite sure when the president took this decision, he had diligently looked at the KEMSA, he had looked at the deal, the Global Fund deal, to make such a decision.
Yes, I think it's a very important point you raised there. Let me start with the part where you talk about casting the net wider. Yes, it can be casted wider, so that we be able to clean up. And he was very categorical that whatever it takes, you will have to take action, and you will have to clean up KEMSA. And I think he's doing that. The aspect of prosecution, yes, these people, much as they can be able to go to court, the state actually, what the state should actually be able to do through the TPP is to first initiate charges against them. So if you just dismiss them and don't charge them, then they have a right to go and fight and say, we have not even been prosecuted anyway. We didn't do any crime. We are just dishonorably discharged. And if somebody believes that indeed whatever it is that they was dismissed for, he was not clearly culpable, or there is no evidence to linking him to that, then he can be able to have his day in court. So the aspect of casting the net wider, yes, the DPP should swing into action. They do investigation. They ask the police. They can write to the IG to do investigations on the same. So that is another process which we expect to be done, because it doesn't end there that somebody has messed something and then they just given a slap on the face and told you step aside and go home quietly. We need these people to know that the consequences can run deep, so that they cannot be able to repeat this, and then it's a lesson to all and sundry that public resources are not supposed to be for plundering. Because if the Global Fund, which is highly supporting the Ministry of Health, is feeling like we are giving this money and these people are just eating it anyhow, then we are not likely to have any money. Remember, we are also having physical challenges in regards to the amount available to even give to the counties. So if the little friends or the little money which our friends are willing to give is also being misused, then we are sinking into a deeper hole. And healthcare is something which cuts across the country and touches lives of people. So it means that that's actually like killing people, because once you take away the money, there are people who are going to suffer. They're not going to get medication which they need to survive. So if they don't get, they die. So there is a multiplier effect which needs to be looked at, and that's where I support your point that this aspect of casting the net wider and even going to the very end to prosecute these people should actually be able to be carried by the relevant authorities to ensure that that is done.
And what message does KEMSA send to the international community? Because looking at the Global Fund, it's a good thing that you've mentioned. This is not the first time that we're having issues of procurement, specifically procurement when it comes to KEMSA. Not only Global Fund, we have a number of our stakeholders, international stakeholders. What message does it send? We have a new board, we are cleaning our house. Do that really stay with the confidence that we have in the global international scene?
You see, Global Fund is a major, is a big company which supports healthcare across Africa. I think it's not only in Kenya, and I don't know where people like eating money from Global Fund, because we had the same scandal in Uganda, which also meant, I think, the minister, some years back, the minister to be fired. So I think there is a tendency people to just like this money from Global Fund. So the message which the president, I think, is sending is that you cannot be able to steal this money. And Global Fund is also trying to stamp its feet and say, look, if we are giving you this money and you are mismanaging it, then there's no reason for us to give this money. And the buck stops with the president, that at the end of the day, this is your administration. So he has to act strongly the way he has done. And I think the DPP should be able to take up the, as I said, to ensure that these people are actually prosecuted. Secondly, we are in a situation whereby people are just used to stealing money and eating it left, right, and center. Not only Global Fund, but any donor money which comes into the country, people are just have this particular appetite for this money because they feel it's ready money which they need to just push into their pockets. So once we can be able to clean up this mess the way the president has started, the rest of the organization should be able to jump in quickly and be able to set the record straight to actually vindicate themselves and to actually be able to be seen that they're actually supporting the president in cleaning corruption across this country. Once, it doesn't take several people to be prosecuted for us to fight corruption. We just need to send one clear message. We send some few guys to jail, and everybody will be scared stiff. Nobody will sign any document once he's not sure where it's going to land him. And with that, we'll be able to have a clear governance structure in terms of these monies which do come into the country, because I think the challenge comes in whereby these people feel that, and I think the president was very deliberate in the fact that he went for the decision makers. The board is the one which runs KEMSA, so there's no way this one could have run under their noses without them knowing. So it means they were either sleeping or they were in bed with this whole story. And then the permanent secretary is the chief accounting officer in the ministry. So, and also even there's some line people at the ministry have also been sacked. So these are the people who are culpable or who are in charge of that particular Global Fund to come into the country, and they have really faced the consequences. And I think we are setting a good precedent. On this, I can authoritatively say that the president is with the people, not anywhere else.
All right. I think we're going to put that to a halt in regards to the PS Public Health, who was fired yesterday by the head of state. And actually, it's more or less sends a message to government officials who want to sink their nails and their talons into government money, public coffers, and even donor funding, as Wakili puts it. And we will be taking a quick break, but when we come back, we have a new sheriff in town. We have a new governor, not in the counties, but at the Central Bank of Kenya, who happens to be Dr. Kamau Thuge, who now awaits Parliament's nod to take up the helm at the Central Bank of Kenya. But we're going to talk about that, including the Kenya-Somali border that has been closed for 11 years. So actually, it was actually closed by former President Mwai Kibaki in regards to matters security. But it had affected a lot of things, and people there are upbeat. And it's a good thing that we have one of the leaders from Mandera here who tell us some of the things that this opening up of the border will bring into the country. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.